So here we go. We're going to count it down. You ready?
Ready.
Then take a deep breath. Hey, what's up, guys? This is Demorrious with the I Am Demorrious podcast. You see the logo. Listen, man, I am super excited to use my platform as I always do. Many people drop episode after episode after episode, and a lot of those episodes may not even have a lot of context or a lot of content, a lot of power, a lot of information or whatever. But my belief is whenever I come to you guys, I want to bring something of value to you. My three things I always talk about in my podcast is I want to encourage you, I want to enlighten you, and I want to empower you with the use of practical words, ideas, and stories. Listen, typically, I'll give you one of my stories, and I'll try to break it down where you can learn from my mistakes, you can learn from my trials, tribulations, whatever the case may be, right? But today, if I was in the church, I would say somebody shout today, but I'm not. So I'm going to just simply say this. Today, man, I got a dear friend of mine that's in the studio with me, someone who I believe her story is just as powerful, just as impactful as any story that I could come up with today, right? She's go by the name of Evelyn Hemphill, Evelyn the Advocate. She's somebody who has a phenomenal story. In a few minutes, I'm going to hold up a piece of paper and I'm going to show you how far her story has reached. But today, in here today, I got my girl, Evelyn. So I'm not even going to try to do a formal introduction because I'll get it wrong. I'll leave something out or whatever the case may be. I know she's a trained medical professional. I know she is a phenomenal makeup person. Now, she may not take clients and all that kind of stuff. She probably should, but I know she's a trained medical professional. Every time I see her, she's a super duper makeup person, all those kind of things. She's always in the community doing great things, but most importantly, the thing that brought her here today is her story. So I want to give her an opportunity to introduce herself, and then we're going to jump into some questions and just have conversation about why she's here. Introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. I'm Evelyn Hemphill, also known as Evelyn the Advocate. I'm a domestic violence survivor and also advocate for the people that are voiceless.
Now, you gotta tell them a little bit more than that. You got to tell them some of your accomplishments. You got to tell them, I mean, like that, I feel you, but like you're her, right? So
Okay.
you ain't got to be so humble. You can tell them,
Right.
tell the people who you are.
Some accomplishments that have been able to happen, and I do give God all the credit. I have been featured in blacknews.com, a number of online newspapers, the Charlotte Post, a domestic violence organization out in Wisconsin interviewed me. I've just been having opportunity after opportunity since I first came out with went public with my story and my ordeal.
Now, see, listen. And she was just like, I'm Evelyn Hemphill, I'm Evelyn the Advocate, and that was it, right? Look at all this stuff, like all these different publications that saw enough value in her story to want to take that story, because I'm a ordained minister, ordained elder, and one of the things you'll always see, as you always heard in this podcast, I talk about God, I use scripture, I talk about the word, and the Bible says this. The Bible says we're overcome by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of our testimony. For those of you that don't know what that means that we're overcome because Jesus is our Savior. But more importantly, he says our testimony is what allows us to overcome. Because when you're afraid of sharing the things that you've been through, you can't learn from what you've been through. When you're ashamed of telling someone what you've been through, then you allow that thing to have more power over you. So you heard her use the word domestic violence, the color of domestic violence that symbolizes, the different aspects of it is purple. She's here today in her purple, right? And so tell us a little bit about this whole domestic violence story.
Well, my whole domestic violence story equals a travesty and justice. I was represented by several attorneys, and at least three guardian ad litem's were involved in the case, and I never got justice. So what I had to do is I had to end up going in court representing myself.
Okay.
And by that, I mean, I filed an appeal, and I also filed documents in the Supreme Court just to get everything documented so that I would be able to tell my story one day.
Cool. So we're at this part of the story, right? And now she's doing the amazing work. She's out here advocating, and she's making a way where she can literally go out here and go into different places, different rooms, sit on different panels and things of that nature. But one of the things I've learned is this: the back of the story is usually the thing that comes after you come through the hard part. You come through the shame, the ridicule, the hurt, the embarrassment, and all of those kind of things. So if you want to, and you don't have to go super deep, but let's walk through, right? Let's walk through what has allowed you to be a face for domestic violence advocacy. Like what's the story? What happened?
My story is I wasn't born with a silver spoon in my mouth, so I know how it feels to have to come up from the bottom.
Okay.
And so that has contributed a lot with me being able to tell my story, and it's just about where I'm from.
Okay.
I believe, and where I feel like God is going to take me to contact the masses, so nobody have to be ashamed and embarrassed about what they've gone through.
Cool. So I remember in my teenage years, a certain person, I won't share the person's name, but a certain relationship I had was like a painful relationship, right? And it was one of those relationships where, it brought me embarrassment, ridicule, and things of that nature. And it caused me to end up having like a level of hatred towards this person. But then I had to stop when I got into probably about 22, 23 years old. And I asked him the question. I said, do me a favor. I said, tell me your story, right? Like tell me your story that allowed you to end up kind of where you are or where you were during that season of your life. So I hear you keep talking about the advocacy work and your story and building the platform to be able to tell your story. Let's dig into your story. What happened? Right? Like what happened?
What happened was I was married for 12 years, and I went through some domestic violence, and I did tell one person, it's always good to share information with somebody, because if anything happens, then you'll have a witness. But I was in a not so good marriage for a long time, and the marriage ended up ending.
Okay. So let's dig a little deeper. I heard you say, and much like me, I grew up in Boy Hill Project. So when you said that started from the bottom, I'm like, yo, I started rapping in my mind. I was like, started from the bottom, now I'm here, right? But like when you said started from the bottom, sometimes those things that happen in our childhood, they shape us and they cause us to sometimes accept some of the things that we probably shouldn't accept. Sometimes it causes us to not have the initial power to reject some of the things that we should reject. So how did your upbringing, how did that impact being in a 12-year marriage and enduring some of the things you've endured?
I have to say there are many generations of domestic violence.
Okay.
And so when you grow up in a situation like that, you think that it's normal. So I never really got a chance to not know that it wasn't normal, because even as a teenager, I got involved in a domestic violence relationship. And then secondly, after I got married, there was another relationship like that. So I didn't know any difference.
So you brought up a interesting fact and an interesting point. You said you were in generations of domestic violence. And, if you're not careful, sometimes you'll learn how to function. You'll learn how to function. How do I phrase it? You learn how to function broken as if you're whole, right?
Yeah.
And so from a teenage domestic violence relationship, and then going into the marriage that ended up having domestic violence in it, like what were some of the things that you endured?
A lot of financial abuse, emotional abuse, and just overall disrespect. It was marriage on paper, but it wasn't like a real marriage.
Okay.
Now that I've learned.
Okay. Dig into that. So you said financial abuse. Why do you think that this individual used that as a form of abuse?
I can't answer that, and I think that maybe it stemmed from their childhood. I don't know. I think that could have been a learned behavior, but honestly, I can't answer that.
So when you endured the financial abuse, was it like Was it a way of this person kind of controlling the situation?
Controlling just everything about the marriage. But see, I was a parent at the age of 16.
Okay.
And so I really didn't understand the aspect of financial abuse because I was so accustomed to making it happen myself. So I wasn't so focused on the money.
Okay.
So that's why I really didn't pay any attention. But once I got out of the marriage,
you kind of look back of it. You was like, wow, like this is what he was doing, right?
Yeah.
So with the financial abuse, and then, you know, one of the things somebody told me, and I interviewed another individual who dealt with domestic violence, and they talked about the emotional abuse and the psychological abuse, and they talked about that level of abuse actually being worse than the physical. Is that something that you would agree with at times?
Yeah, because most of mine was that type of abuse. It was some physical at the end, but it was mainly that was a heavy weight of abuse, the mental and emotional and stuff like that.
Why do you think a person would try to mentally abuse someone?
Because I believe that some people may have mental issues that they refuse to address, and so they will just place that burden upon somebody else.
So it's almost like that old saying that says, hurt people hurt people.
I believe so. Okay. Yeah.
So if we're going back and now, like, there, I think it's, what is it? The Christmas Carol. I think that's what it's called, where like the guy, it was like the ghost of Christmas Eve or whatever, and it's like the ghost of Christmas past, Christmas present, and then Christmas future, right? Like, he was able to go and look like he was on the outside looking in. Like, what would you tell that teenage Evelyn that was involved in a domestic relationship at that time? Like, if that young girl was sitting in front of you right now, like what would you tell her if she could hear you?
I would tell that person that if that person is abusing you in any way, it's not going to get better. It's only going to get worse. Okay. But I love him. Yeah, but that person is going to set you back maybe a lifetime.
But after he hit me, he said he was sorry.
It'll most likely happen again.
But he said that he was going through a lot and he was stressed out because of school, and, you know, his mama was having issues, his mom and dad was having issues, so he was just upset and he just took his frustration out on me. But he really, really does love me, because, I mean, he's bought me stuff and he's taken me to the mall, and we go on dates, and, like, he buys me stuff for Valentine's. Like,
materialistic things, they really don't mean anything. To me, I mean, it's nice having nice things, but in an important relationship, people should know how to treat other people. So with this young girl, because like right now, I'm playing the role of young Evelyn, and I'm giving you some of these excuses that, you know, oftentimes these teenagers give us because they haven't lived life yet, right? So like, so you're on the outside looking in at me as being young Evelyn, and you got to convince me, because like I haven't. I'm thinking that, like, everybody has nice bags, and I want to have a nice bag. So like, how do you? What is it that you think would be vital in a parent talking to their kid to help them potentially open up their eyes and see what's going on? First of all, I feel like parents typically talk about molestation at a young age, you know, to their children, but domestic violence need to be included in that too. Why do you think they don't do it? Because it's hard to talk about something that you're participating in, right? Like because you said for you, you're like, it was generations. And so if your mom came to you, or whoever, not saying it was your mom that was involved in it, but if they came to you like, girl, don't be letting them do that. But then you see so-and-so doing it, you're like, bro, how can you tell me? Okay, well, that's why education comes in. Okay. And since the last time you and I had a conversation, I became an advocate. Okay. I went through a training, and I understand what domestic violence is now. Cool.
So so with your training, and I'm glad you brought up your training, like with that particular training that you went through, what are some of the tools that you developed or you learned during that training that now makes you more powerful to go into the world and begin to break this ugly thing that's happening?
Okay, I would like to give a shout out to Catapult Outreach for that, because that's where that was the doorway.
Cool. Catapult. Shout out.
I collaborate with Catapult. But
Cool.
anyway, see, with advocacy, people feel like that you're supposed to do everything for this person, but you're not. Okay. Advocacy is helping that person to become independent. Okay. And as an advocate, what the wrong way to approach somebody is to tell them that they need to leave the relationship. That's not what an advocate does. That advocate empowers that person and allows that person to make that decision while guiding them to resources.
I like that. I like that because, you know, most people, and I'm glad we did that little role playing, because a lot of times, you know, I was waiting on you to give me what the typical person would get, right? But you are advocating. You're like, yo, like, no, I'm not, because until a person makes it up in their mind, right?
Right.
Until they make it up in their mind that I'm done with this, or I deserve better, or I want better, right? It's almost like what they say, beating a dead horse.
Yeah. And you have to leave that person, allow that person to have their autonomy, because you cannot run that individual's life. You can lead them to resources. You can educate them and just allow them to be independent in the situation. And plus, that could be a very dangerous situation with somebody telling somebody to leave a relationship, because the abuser may take that person's life.
Yeah.
That person knows that abuser because they reside with them. As an advocate, I don't live with that individual.
Yeah. You know, it's ironic you say that, because one of the other individuals I did some podcasting with, we were talking, and she was talking about, you know, that person that's leaving, they have to have a plan, right? Like there's steps to this, right? It's not as easy as just saying, "Hey, girl, get your bag and you leave," right?
It's a safety plan. Yeah. It's called a safety plan.
Talk about it.
A safety plan is what I've learned. Have a separate cell phone.
Okay.
Take your important documents with you.
Okay.
And just have an emergency bag packed.
Okay. Okay.
And sometimes you may not be able to take all your worldly possessions, depending on the situation.
Right.
If you choose, do so to leave. If you choose to leave, you may not be able to do that.
Because I forget the exact number, and one of my friends, she's a powerful advocate as well. But I forget the numbers. Like, is it like 7 to 8 times or 7 to 10 times? I forget how many times it is that a person, puts in their mind that they're going to leave before they actually do it. Right? I forget the number, but she was talking about, oftentimes that person doesn't just leave.
And I believe I should have left my situation sooner than I did, but I was naive at that time. I was just a naive person. I'll be the first one to admit that, but naive no more.
She was like, because I told her to introduce herself. She's like, "Oh, I'm Evelyn the Advocate." I'm like, okay, but no, I'm just joking with you. So now we've talked about the financial abuse. We talked about the psychological abuse. We talked about the emotional abuse, and then even some physical abuse. And then it being like a generational type thing that you saw it, right? Mm-hmm. And so you thought that it was normal. So now walk us through, you said you left this 12-year marriage, and that's where like a real test began, right? Because like you endured a lot of stuff. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about it.
I endured a lot of stuff, and what really woke me up is my child also endured a lot of stuff, because there was a child involved, and I was determined that child would know me at any cost. Okay. So that's when when I realized that the corruption in the system was contributing to me not being heard in the case, that's when I took it into my own hands, because I was not going to live on this earth without my child knowing me.
So let's walk through that, because you were on a different side of the situation than the traditional side, right? Because like in society, typically, you go through a divorce, and the judge says, all right, the kids, they go with the mom. Dad, you pay child support, and we'll give you some type of visitation. You were on the other side.
I paid the child support. I had the visitation.
How did that happen?
Just lack of legal representation.
Okay.
Lack of legal representation by licensed attorneys.
Okay.
That's what happened. And that's the activist part of me.
Okay.
I'm an advocate, but I'm also an activist.
Okay.
And I do speak against corruption that happens in the court systems, because it happened to me.
Okay.
So I have no choice but to talk about it. I have to talk about both aspects, every aspect, not just one part of it.
So you went through the divorce, and in the divorce decree, the judge said what?
Well, I have to be transparent in the situation. I stepped out of the marriage also.
Okay.
Well, I did step out of the marriage, and I don't know what the other person done, but I believe they did too.
Okay.
But at the time, it wasn't on me to prove that they did. It was on them to prove that I did it. So that's what happened. And the judge said that since you did that, the custody of the child will go to this person, despite the fact that during the whole marriage and abuse, I was taking care of the child.
Wow.
And none of that was heard. None of that was represented to the court until 2018.
So let me ask you a question. And we're going to jump into, how God gave you like a supernatural wisdom and, skill set to kind of navigate the court system. I think that's a phenomenal story. And so I want them to hear it. But so would you say they call her Lady Justice, right? They say Lady Justice is supposed to be blind. Can she see a little bit?
She's not seeing what she needs to see.
Okay, so she's not blind, but she can see some stuff sometimes that ain't right and follow along with it.
Keep on going with it, especially when there's a whole team involved.
Wow. All right. So now we're let me say this first. Thank you for being transparent, right? Because one of the things I've learned about transparency is transparency and vulnerability are sometimes some of the hardest things for people to do, right? Because it exposes a side of us or a part of us oftentimes that we know is going to be judged, have a difference of opinion. So I wanted to stop and personally say thank you for that level of transparency, because there's somebody out there who's in that situation who, they're in that spot, right? And they're having to say, well, man, I did wrong. So maybe me not having access to my kid, maybe that's my punishment. And that's maybe what they've been walking around with for years. But you're here to tell them no.
No. Because you're part of the story. Until you can get into a courtroom and represent yourself, most of the story will not even be told in family court. A lot of that information is hearsay, and proof doesn't even have to be brought before the court most of the time. Wow. That's how family court works.
Wow. So sometimes it's like if I have the best attorney and I can get them to paint a convincing case, then it doesn't even matter that you got more to the story.
That's right.
So now we're in the courtroom. Well, let me ask this question. How long was it that the imbalance of custody or visitation or the word whichever word you want to choose, how long was the imbalance? Like, how long did that last before you were able to right the ship, if you will?
That lasted for years. From 2009, the divorce was found in 2010, and I did not get back into court as a pro se litigant until 2018. So that was many years after over $100,000 came out of my pocket.
Wait. So 8 years. So the judge said, all right, because you did what you did, Dad, you get custody of your kid. And so for 8 years, a mother who stayed up at night and felt every kick, right? A mother who would stay up at night and rub the stomach and sing to the baby. The mother that would lay hands on her stomach and pray over the kid. The mother that, ultimately went through, from what I've been told, I've been blessed to have 3 amazing kids, and my wife is phenomenal. She gave birth to all of them naturally. And, they said that's a pain that you can't even describe.
I was devastated when I did not have custody of my son. I didn't know what to do because, mind you, I just told you I've been a parent since I was 16 years old. And for that to happen, it was devastating. It was devastating.
So a fire was lit under you because you said, I'm tired of this. I'm tired of having to accept what you think I should have.
Yes.
I'm tired of my child accepting what you think my child should have. And now I'm getting ready to do something about it.
Exactly.
Walk me through that moment if you remember. Like walk me through like that shift in your mind that said, whatever I gotta do, I'm gonna do it.
I was still working full time. I worked at a hospital in the operating room. Many nights I did not sleep. I also developed a medical problem. Going through all the stress, I developed a thyroid problem, but it got corrected. But anyway, when I kept going into court and I noticed that my voice was silenced by my own paid attorneys, they were not even defending me in my opinion. I was the plaintiff. The game changed during the last case.
Okay.
Because during the initial case, I was the defendant.
Okay.
But when I went back, I was the plaintiff. And the plaintiff is the one that brings the case forth.
Okay.
So when I noticed that the attorneys wasn't doing anything in my best interest, I fired them.
Okay.
And then I found a loophole to get back in court, and I went through it.
Nah, you got to talk about it. Talk about that loophole.
Well, in South Carolina, you can represent yourself, but you have to have your documentation and stuff together.
Okay.
And during the first divorce hearing, I was charged with contempt of court because my first attorney didn't show up. Okay. And I had to defend myself against a licensed attorney, but I said the game has changed. It wasn't going to happen this time.
What'd you do to make it different?
What I made it different is I got rid of that attorney that I had.
Okay.
When I noticed that they were not defending me when they were getting money out of my pocket to do so. But then
somebody else stepped in the courtroom that was going to tell their story, that was going to defend the way that they needed to be defended. Who was that person?
That was Evelyn the Advocate. That's when Evelyn the Advocate came forth.
Yeah.
In 2018. Yeah. I was able to go into the courtroom in Chester for 4 days. Wow. And represent myself against a licensed attorney.
Where did that wisdom come from? Because
I prayed.
Okay.
I prayed for a long time.
Yeah.
That's where it came from. That's the only thing I know how to say. That's the only thing I know. Because I haven't gone to school to be a lawyer.
Okay. Romans 8:28 says that all things work together for the good of them that love God and that are called according to his purpose. A lot of times we go through trials, we go through tribulations, and we don't know why. We don't know what it's for. but ultimately they describe the God that I serve as the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. So he sees the end at the beginning. And so we're walking through trials, we're walking through tribulations, and we have no idea what this is for. But then ultimately, if we, as Jesus said in the Garden of Gethsemane, say, not my will, but let your will be done, then he can step up and show out. This paper right here says, witnesses say police beat men after a chase. It says Evelyn Cunningham of Rock Hill is a witness in the case of police brutality involving this Chester man. So this is a clip from the Herald. Talk about that real quick before we wrap up.
I think I was around 22 years old when that happened. That was in 1993, right?
Yeah. Yep.
1993. I was around 22 years old, and a friend and myself noticed a man getting brutally attacked by the police and stuff like that. But I wasn't afraid to tell a story. So that means that I have been in the game for 31 years now.
Yeah.
But when I came forth when I was 22 years old, I didn't even understand what was happening.
And listen to me. That's why I said all things work together for the good, right? So like even the small things that we may not even understand that are happening in this season of our life, how they're going to connect with the next season of our life and the next season, but God is literally like weaving something together that's going to make a beautiful tapestry, right? So at 22, you were speaking out against injustice. You endured your life's challenges. You went into a courtroom after firing a licensed attorney. You represented yourself. You used the wisdom that God gave you to ultimately change the whole custody situation, right?
It was never changed, but my rights, it kind of decreased being violated because the enemy knew that I knew how to get back into the courtroom. The game had changed.
Cool. I like that. The game had changed. And see, so this is what I want to do. I want to pause right here, and I want you, because I think we've painted a awesome picture to show how you went from there to here and how you've been equipped with even more to do even more. Tell everybody how they can find you and how they can tap into you as an advocate to help them in their situations.
I am on Facebook. I do have a business page, Evelyn the Advocate. I have a personal page, Evelyn Hemphill, and I also have a website, Evelyn the Domestic Violence Advocate at uniweb.com. So you can get in touch with me there.
Hey, listen, she is a contributing author. She ain't say nothing about that. She's just a dope person. Two times.
And I'm working on a memoir.
And she's working. See what I'm saying? Now all of a sudden she want to talk about who she is, right?
Thank you, Tutelage Publishing.
See, Tutelage Publishing. Listen, like she's all that. I reached a stage in my life where I don't give flowers to people, but I give titles to people. And the title that I give to people, to the right guy, I say he's him. And what that means is you're that person. Like there's something special, there's something unique, there's something amazing about you. And so I'm going to give you that title, not him, but I'm going to give you that title. You're her. You're her. There's an anointing that God is giving you. There's a grace that God is giving you to go out here and change the world on behalf of him, for other people. And I'm honored to be connected to you. Anytime, we get an opportunity to bring dope people on the platform, that's what I do. And so I thought it would be robbery if I didn't allow you to sit next to me and we talk about your story. And next time, we're going to dig even deeper. I want you to just drop gems and jewels of how people can, identify, things that may not be right. I want us to go a little bit deeper into it, how to properly vet, your attorney, how to properly see if your attorney's doing what they should be doing, right? Because some people don't know, right?
I didn't know.
But you've been through it now, so now you know what to look for.
I know what to look for.
Hey, I'm proud of you.
Thank you so much.
Evelyn, the advocate, you know who she is. She told you how to get her. I'll make sure all of her information is on the screen. We'll make sure you have all of her contact information so that you can reach out to her. Listen, you know who I am. I am Demorrious. I use my platform to encourage, enlighten, and empower with people with the use of practical words, ideas, and stories. You heard her story. Take her story, share it, run with it. Let the world know that there's people out here that's taking mess and turn it into a message. Until the next time, talk to you later.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're cool.